Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a closer look at how Ukraine reclaimed the advantage and why the Crimea breakthrough stunned Moscow. This moment marked a major shift in momentum and changed how the conflict is understood on a global level. For a long time, the war appeared locked in a pattern. Front lines shifted slowly, expectations hardened, and many believed decisive changes were unlikely. Crimea, in particular, was seen as firmly out of reach. That belief shaped strategies, media narratives, and international discussions. Crimea was often described as a future issue, something to be negotiated rather than challenged directly. Ukraine understood this perception very clearly. Instead of confronting it openly, Kyiv focused on preparation. Quiet planning replaced public signaling. This approach required patience. Progress was not always visible, and silence was often mistaken for inactivity. In reality, it was a period of learning and positioning. Every phase of the conflict provided lessons. Ukraine studied both successes and failures carefully. Adaptation became constant rather than occasional. Modern warfare rewards those who learn faster. Ukraine invested heavily in intelligence, coordination, and flexibility. These elements proved decisive over time. Crimea's importance went far beyond territory. It symbolized control of access routes, regional dominance, and long-term influence. Challenging that symbol meant challenging a deeply rooted assumption. Over time, confidence grew on the opposing side. Crimea was treated as secure and permanent. When confidence becomes routine, blind spots emerge. Ukraine focused on identifying those blind spots. Pressure was applied gradually and selectively. No single action revealed the full intent. This strategy avoided early escalation. It preserved resources and maintained uncertainty. Uncertainty forces hesitation, and hesitation creates opportunity. As preparations matured, conditions began to align. Small advantages accumulated. Systems were tested quietly under stress. When momentum finally shifted, it did not happen through one dramatic event. Instead, it emerged from a series of coordinated pressures. Supply routes faced strain, communication networks were tested, coordination became more difficult under sustained pressure. Each challenge alone might have been manageable. Together, they created confusion. Confusion slows decisions and amplifies existing weaknesses. Moscow's response revealed surprise. Adjustments came later than expected. Planning assumptions began to collapse. Ukraine did not rush the moment. Discipline remained central. Pressure was maintained without overreach. This restraint was deliberate. It reduced risk and avoided unnecessary losses. It showed confidence in the broader strategy. As control began to change, the psychological impact became clear. Ukrainian morale surged. Belief strengthened across institutions and society. Belief is a powerful force. It shapes endurance, clarity, and resolve under pressure. For many Ukrainians, Crimea carried deep emotional significance. It represented loss, identity, and unfinished history. Progress there resonated far beyond the battlefield. International reactions followed quickly. Analysts and governments reassessed long-held assumptions. What once seemed unrealistic now demanded serious attention. Support that had been cautious became more confident. Ukraine was increasingly seen as shaping events rather than reacting to them. Crimea's strategic value made the breakthrough impossible to ignore. Control over the peninsula affects maritime security, trade routes, and regional balance. The Black Sea dynamic shifted, naval planning changed, regional security calculations were revised. These changes rippled outward. Diplomatic conversations took on new urgency. Leverage shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. The breakthrough highlighted core principles of modern warfare. Intelligence, coordination, and sustained pressure proved more effective than brute force. Ukraine avoided unnecessary confrontation. Instead, systems were weakened over time until they could no longer function effectively. This approach preserved strength. It reflected long-term thinking rather than short-term spectacle. Information management played a crucial role. Clear communication reduced confusion and maintained trust among civilians and allies. Kyiv controlled messaging carefully. Actions were explained with clarity, reinforcing legitimacy and unity. For Moscow, the challenge was different. Crimea had been presented as secure and permanent. Losing the advantage there undermined years of messaging. Symbols matter in conflict. When symbols fall, internal pressure increases. Explaining loss becomes more difficult than explaining conflict. Economic implications followed. Crimea's status influenced sanctions, trade planning, and long-term investment decisions. For Ukraine, new priorities emerged. Discussions about governance, reintegration, and reconstruction gained urgency. For civilians connected to Crimea, emotions were complex, relief mixed with uncertainty. Hope existed alongside caution. Stability is about more than borders. It is about safety, predictability, and the ability to plan for the future. The breakthrough challenged assumptions about deterrence. Long-held control does not guarantee permanence. Time is often seen as favoring occupation. In this case, time favored preparation, learning, and resilience. Military analysts around the world studied the shift closely. Traditional models struggled to explain how such change occurred without massive escalation. The lesson was clear. Adaptability matters more than rigidity. Learning faster than an opponent creates decisive advantages. Ukraine demonstrated this repeatedly. Adjustments were made quickly. Feedback loops were short. Leadership played a central role. Clear objectives combined with flexible execution allowed rapid responses to changing conditions. Decentralized decision-making improved speed. Units acted on opportunities without waiting for rigid approval chains. Coordination between military, intelligence, and diplomatic efforts ensured consistency. Every move aligned with broader goals. Restraint remained important. Ukraine avoided actions that could undermine long-term strategy. This restraint preserved credibility. It signaled confidence rather than hesitation. Elsewhere, pressure increased. Maintaining control required more attention and resources. The psychological burden grew heavier. Doubt spread as certainty faded. Media narratives shifted. Coverage moved from stalemate to transformation. Public opinion followed. Ukraine was increasingly viewed as capable of shaping outcomes. Diplomatic dynamics adjusted accordingly. Negotiation positions evolved with new realities. Legitimacy strengthened Ukraine's position. Actions were widely seen as aligned with international norms. Legitimacy sustains endurance. It attracts support and reinforces morale over time. For younger generations, the moment carried lasting significance. It reinforced belief in national agency and future possibility. The breakthrough challenged the idea that borders can be changed without consequence. Other nations observed closely. Lessons from Crimea extended beyond the immediate conflict. Patience proved decisive. Ukraine waited for the right conditions rather than forcing outcomes. Early skepticism faded in hindsight. Strategy outweighed speed. Reclaiming the advantage in Crimea was not an ending. It was a turning point that redefined what was possible. Regional security planning changed. Old assumptions were discarded. Ukraine now operated with greater confidence. Confidence reshapes risk assessment. Risks once avoided became calculated options. Fear no longer dominated every decision. Challenges remained real. Costs were high. Losses were not erased, but direction matters, and direction had clearly shifted. This moment reminded the world that history is not fixed. It moves when preparation meets opportunity. The Crimea breakthrough changed more than territory. It changed how power, patience, and persistence are understood. It showed that even entrenched situations can evolve. This episode will be studied for years, not for noise, but for effectiveness. It demonstrated how sustained pressure can outperform brute force. The human cost remains part of the story. No breakthrough comes without sacrifice. Yet moments like this give meaning to sacrifice. They provide clarity when fatigue sets in. Ukraine reclaiming the advantage reshaped the conflict's narrative. Instead of asking whether change was possible, the question became how far change could go. Moscow was stunned because certainty collapsed. The world was surprised because assumptions were challenged. And this breakthrough matters because it proved that preparation, adaptability, and resolve can still change the course of modern warfare. It stands as a reminder that power is measured not only in strength, but in the ability to learn, wait, and act decisively when the moment arrives.